A Jedi must have the deepest commitment, the most serious mind. This one, a long time have I watched. All his life as he looked away to the future, to the horizon, never his mind on where he was.
Welcome back to the Training Babble podcast. I'm your host, Dave Schell, and we're back for another rant-filled episode with Coach Matti Rowe. Matti, thanks for being here.
Always a pleasure, Dave.
So what are we ranting about today? The airing of grievances.
It's not the holidays, but we're going to pretend it is. No, one thing I've noticed in athlete exchanges lately, and I think this also applies to other parts of life, but is the sort of your time orientation. So if you're past oriented, present oriented, or future oriented, and obviously no one is all of like just one of those things. We all have we're all weighted in different ways. But I do notice that there's a lot of people who spend a lot of time in the past or a lot of time in the future. And from a coaching perspective, it drives me insane because oftentimes, while those things can be helpful, they can also really get in your way and also ruin and obscure good things that you're doing now or achieving now or good trajectories you're on now.
I really like that. And I think we'll touch on that more in a minute. But when you first brought this up and kind of pitched this to me, the first thing that occurred to me is I learned recently, last couple months or year or whatever, this idea that anxiety is always thinking about the future and depression is always thinking about the past. And that's where we kind of get stuck because we have no control over either of those things versus being in the present and just dealing with things as they come. I think it's a great topic.
Thanks. Yeah. I think to kick it off, I think one of the past things, and this will probably resonate with lots of masters athletes, probably just because you've had more experience.
No, that's exactly when you first brought it up. That's the other thing I thought about is 2012 me, where I'm always trying to get back to.
Yeah. And that's the big one. So how would you describe that?
Yeah, for me, it's that was my peak year. That's when I was essentially doing everything right. My body composition was the best. It was essentially just training full time. And that's when I had my best times across all these things. And so every year since then has been trying to get back to there, even though the confounding variables where it's you're getting older every year, and all these other things are changing and it's not really realistic or fair.
Put a pin in that. I definitely the whole getting older every year, put a pin in that because I do want to return to that. I think that's important. So all of us, especially if you've been training and racing long enough, you've had a year that everything came together, or maybe it was even a couple months, but whatever it is, you tend to turn those glorious, reality bending months or years or year into some sort of altar some religion, some God, some thing, some monument that you always compare yourself to in the years that follow. And it's terrible. It's just such terrible baggage for an athlete because first of all, whatever led to that, often what leads to that peak performance, it's just the lens that you're looking at that is divorced from what it took to do that. And in many cases, there were lots of terrible consequences to that, mono focus to achieve that performance that they're now dealing with now. For example, let's say you trained to the neglect of your kid or something. And,
right.
Those were formative years and now you just don't connect as much and they don't call. Well, shit, man, you were really fast, or shit, lady, you were really fast, but, now you're not connected with your kid. And you had that, you don't have so many chances in life and, some times matter more than other. So, yeah, you were fast, but you your opportunity cost was a relationship, or your opportunity cost was a job, or it could have been at the expense of your health as well, because there's lots of little tweaks you can do in the short term. For example, like under eating. Well, your body, as long as you have a foundation of health, you could under eat, get a little bit maybe leaner than you should have, increase that power to weight ratio briefly, but then that spirals into a full blown whatever. And then you're dealing with it for 10 years or something, but you look back right before you cracked and you're like, that was such a great time. It's like, was it? Like, was it really? And also to segue into, you talking about aging as well. There's this great concept I heard in another podcast, which is it's like the white witch or the red witch paradox, which comes from some sort of Disney thing. But essentially, maybe it's Alice in Wonderland. And Alice is talking to somebody and they're like, you've got to run as fast as you can, like just to stay alive, like just to stay away from the witch. And it's the same thing with aging. Like I work with so many people and, maybe it's been 5 or 6 years at this point, maybe even 7 with some of them. And they're older and it's like, look, you're not, it takes a lot of work not to suck. It takes a lot of work not to go like directly backwards because of how aging is. Do you think it's a linear thing? It's more like stepwise, and we might have actually passed through some of those stepward drops and really mitigated them. And you might be all bent because your power has gone down 10, 15, 20 watts, but it could have gone down 70 if you would have stopped working with me, because then you wouldn't have somebody to kind of yell at you to remind you about your higher self. And then you decide to take a break, which turns into a break for a year. Then you pick up some sort of like foodie habit. Now you've gained 25 pounds. Not that that ever happens to anybody. Then you didn't drink before, but you're hanging out with the wrong crowd. Then suddenly you find yourself 3 years later and you've aged 10. You're never getting back where you were. So it takes a lot of work just to be where you were. And that might not be a satisfying answer, but it is a reality that people, I don't think, appreciate enough or like to face.
Well, and it's like the last episode we talked about, and I like harp on this all the time. I commented on an athlete, I think yesterday, where it's like our job is to see the forest through the trees. And so as an athlete, when you're in it and just looking at like this season or the last 3 months or whatever, then it's like you're always comparing yourself, and it's like our job is to like see that bigger picture where it's like exactly like you said, is adding context. Like, yeah, your power, like on paper, your power hasn't gone up over the last 5 years or something. But at the same time, you're 5 years older and you're training less or like all these other things, all these other confounding variables that that are hard to take account of a lot of times.
Yeah. Changing at different rates as well. Your cardio could be going down faster than your strength, or who knows? There's lots of things that are going on.
So with that, like before we kind of move on to this other thing, it's like, how do you address this with athletes? And I'm thinking about myself specifically, where it's like I coach an older athlete who does time trials, and she's always comparing herself to, like 10 years ago or something. And it like, so for me, I'm always like, okay, we need to compare yourself to like this season on this bike in these conditions. Like, look at how you're relating to your competitors around you, not to yourself 5 years ago.
Yeah. I think it's an evergreen human problem, in that we, like you said, coaching is like taking care of the forest part of the thing. But I think another thing is like, if coaches are drones hovering over the forest watching things and they're watching their athlete, they need to deliver or like, I don't know, land missiles in their vicinity quite often to remind them of the lessons that we've learned but have forgotten. Like, humans are so myopic, like we just forget so quickly. And so you can look an athlete in the eye. You could meet them in person and be like, look, the shadow of you, this monster that had whatever FDP back in the day, it's not coming back. You need to stop letting this ghost haunt you. And anyway, it was only for a month. It wasn't like you were great forever. Give them some humor. Make them feel bad about themselves. That helps. So then they'll be like, cool. Yeah, I got it. But they just have this crazy light in the back of their eye. And then you depart, you get back into your drone, they go back into the forest, and then you get up there and you just have to you have to remind yourself as a coach, like every 2 weeks, launch, like,
Yeah.
stop being haunted by her. So that's like, I do reminders, but I also do very, very practical things, which is, for example, in the off season or the transition from the off season to the start of the season, I'm always like, heart rate only, no chasing watts. Like, stop. And I think this is definitely one of those situations where like power meters, watts, all those metrics, they just such a double-edged sword. And this is where it cuts in a way I don't like. It's just people think it's so absolute. They're just like, my power meter on my left-handed stages in 2014 read this. And it's like, can I say something that's going to hurt?
Well, yeah, I'm dealing, like, there's an athlete I'm dealing with right now that she just did this. If she's listening, she'll laugh, I'm sure. But she just did this ride on last Saturday, and I got a threshold notification that her new threshold was like 305 or something like that, and that she averaged like 320 for 2 hours, like just all this stuff. I'm like, my reply was like, "Oh yeah, that looks super legit." She's like, "Is that sarcasm?" I'm like, "Definitely." But yeah, like I almost said that. It's like, not only are we like we're comparing ourselves to ourselves 5 years ago on a different bike with a different power meter and a different like just all these things, and like you and I harp on this all the time, where it's like, even if you had the exact same manufacturer power meter on every bike, there's still discrepancies between the power meters.
Yeah.
You know, and from day to day, or even the same power meter. If you're always on the same bike on the same power meter, there's variability from day to day, plus minus 2.5%, you know? And so you have to take that like with a grain of salt, where it's like the standard deviation, you know?
Yeah, it's no way to live. You can't live like that. You can't live and die by those numbers. It's like when people are working on their diet and they're counting calories, which I think can be a helpful tool, but then they think that like whatever they put into MyFitnessPal is the exact proportion or exact caloric content. It's like,
yeah,
it's like, it's a direction.
Right, exactly. Right. Oh man, I'm thinking about this. There's this book. It's like mathematical thinking, how to not be wrong or something like that. And it's like, but it goes down this path of like, math is also this like construct of like, it's made up. Right. And it's like, we have to assume some things, and it's like, it's not exactly right because it's not an exact science, but it's close enough that it works. You know, and so it's the same thing with all these metrics. And I'm also like reminded about right now. So we're in Colorado. We just did a jump from like 40 to 50 degrees to 60 to 80 degrees. And so it's like everybody goes out, their power's lower, their heart rate's higher, RPE's higher, they think they suck. And like, I especially see this with runners.
Oh yeah.
It's like, oh God. And it's like, just as we're getting fit and just as we're like about to come into the season and you would expect these things to start showing up, it's like the temperature jumps up 20 degrees, you know, and we lose sight of that, right? Like all these
heat always
influences.
Wins.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know much in coaching, but heat wins.
But that's the problem with like being stuck on these metrics a lot of times, is that like they're tools, but they're not absolute.
This is reminding me of another segue, which you'll appreciate, which is to culture our listeners. So one Norwegian word I love is rosemalling, which just means to like elaborately decorate, but it's used colloquial to say that you're sugarcoating something. And I think another funny part about this past living thing that people do, living in the past, looking at the past with rose-colored lenses, is it is a lot of sugarcoating. Like you go back and you're like, if you really examine it, like it wasn't as great as you thought it was. You are rewriting memories in your head whenever you access them to tell the story you want to hear now.
Yeah.
And that can be both good or bad. If you're like some weird masochist and because it serves you in some way and you're like, I suck. And then you're fully capable of taking a memory from the past that was great and a sign of like discipline and moderation and control and great coach-athlete relationship and beautiful execution. And you could be like, that was terrible. And it's like, no, it wasn't. Equally, you can go back in the past and be like, man, Garmin Sharp really overlooked me when I finished 16th in the local weekday time trial. It's like no, that like wasn't that great. But people get trapped there and can spend way too much time thinking about that.
So somebody told me recently, and I haven't verified this myself, but like that it's the same. We use the same neurons for fantasy and memory, and our brains can't really tell the difference, and that's why we end up like romanticizing the past.
How was that headline not splashed across my like BBC updates? My God, like
yeah,
man, fantasy. Like the older I get, the more I detest fantasy. Like it just ruins so many people's lives because they have great, like they're doing great things. Like you're getting fit, you're getting faster on the bike, your skills are improving. But because of the way we like to romanticize things, introduce fantasy, it's like it messes with our expectations and it also ruins our own valuation of what we've done. It's just
yeah. So there's two things there. One, I think of the quote, comparison is a thief of joy.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I talk to athletes about this all the time is that like one of the biggest issues is when reality doesn't meet expectations, right? It's like, and like to bring this back to racing, like you're in a race and you think using Unbound, I'll use myself as an example. When I did Unbound in 2021, it's like, the first 4 hours, I'm just flying. I'm doing the math in my head. It's like, oh, at this rate, I'm going to be finishing at this time and stuff like that. And then the hammer, like reality set in. I'm laying up against a store, like shoving Coke and chips into my mouth. And the time just keeps going down and down. And then we hit mud. And then we hit like, you know, it's just like thing. And it's like, I guess the last quote I'll say is like, the root of all suffering is desire, right? The desire to be faster, the desire to be done with this, the desire for it to be easier, like all these things. And so it's like, this brings us back to that whole being in the moment and being present thing. It's like when we're comparing ourselves to who we want to be or to somebody else, that's when this disappointment happens. But if we can just like accept ourselves for who we are in that moment, it's going to be a lot more pleasurable journey, I think.
See, here we are dabbling in like Eastern religious traditions.
Exactly.
But this, like, I do get to these places, and it's funny because I think that no matter what you're talking about, you don't have to stray that far before you end in like until philosophy is sort of pertinent to what you're talking about.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
You're totally right. I like to tell people, and I've said this before, but like right off the bat, like your goals are going to disappoint you. I just had this happen with an athlete, and like they had low expectations going into race. They won, which was so sick, and I was so happy for him. And then, of course, like the next week, he's going to go to another race, and I'm like, he's going to be head case. He's building this up in his head. He thinks one win, why not two? You know, because it always expectations always have to rise. It's never enough. You always have to go more and more and more. And he had a pretty good result, honestly, but he was kind of like, I wouldn't say devastated, but like really bummed. And I was just like up in my drone, and I'm like, of course, like I wanted to just bomb him. Like, of course you're up. Like, of course you're disappointed. Like, it's never going to be enough. Like, it just isn't.
Well, and that's part of I had that conversation with an athlete at one point, and specifically that, like, when will it be enough? Because it is like a disease of more, right? It's like,
yeah.
And so just always chasing that. And so like you hear about people going to the Olympics and winning gold and then being like depressed afterwards, because it's like, where do you go from there?
Right.
You know? So now let's flip this and talk about the opposite side,
Sure.
Looking into the future. And the thing that I wanted to say is like, I talk to athletes about this a lot. So it's again, like expectations not meeting reality or whatever, like eyes always on the horizon. And I have to tell them like, okay, like sometimes you need to stop and turn around and look at how far you've come versus always looking at how far you have to go. Because I think we're really bad as humans at that. Like we can't like appreciate like, man, I've done a lot. Like I've accomplished a lot. And yes, I'm not where I want to be yet, but I'm on the way, you know?
Yeah. So that's like a healthy orientation toward the past. Like that's a good use case for looking at the past.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I think that's important. I've seen that a lot. I also think there's a healthy orientation toward the future as well. I think if more athletes were up in the drone with us a little bit more, I think there would be a lot more sanity down in the actual path in the jungle. But one of the biggest things I see, this is also sort of a corporate-y / office phenomenon, is I would call it meta work. It's the phenomenon of meta work. So it's not work. It's like talking about work, which can become work. Which is all to say that there's a lot of things you could do with training and the details and optimization. Like what am I saying? Okay, I'll set this up better. So we just talked about meta work. We can all understand what that is. It's work about work. It's like spending 40 minutes planning your schedule before you get started on the things in your schedule. That's meta work. Yeah. Next is this sort of like hacker, marginal gains optimization mindset. And when you combine those two in a person, wow, you could spend 2 hours like planning and trying to optimize in 1 hour training.
Yeah.
And then spend another 2 hours obsessing about that. And it's like the thing under it that's really driving everything is, your pace on the ground. Like your coach the drone operator is guiding you. That's what the coach is for. And talking to you. You need, like, you have simple tasks. And when you try to do both, I think that's ironically enough, like where you start going off the trail or just not seeing dangers, like common pitfalls that happen.
Yeah. So I think this gets into several other things here, but it's like, first off, I think a lot of athletes hire a coach so that they don't have to think about what to do every day. And so when they're still spending that mental energy wondering about, like, you've put the workout on there and it's not the most complicated, fancy 85 plus interval workout, then they start to question it and second guess it and stuff like that. And so now they're kind of wasting mental energy. And so that's one piece of this. The other thing I think that is kind of the dirty secret of coaching, or in my experience, is at the end of the day, the people that I see have the most success, it's consistency and just do the damn work. So it's like, you don't have to split hairs about what percentage this interval was at and like all these other things. It's like, just do the damn work, because it's about doing more work over time. And so it's not, like we say this all the time, it's not what you do today, it's what you do every day and every week and every month and every year that starts to accumulate over time.
Yeah, and you might ask, why do athletes do that? I think, in my observation, it's a lot about control. It's this sense that if you just plan well enough, then the normal vicissitudes of life, the sicknesses, the injuries, the having to take time for work, whatever it might be, that if you just like optimize your planning enough, then you will get to be. But it never works like that. You know?
Yeah. So, I mean, on that note, like I'm thinking of an athlete right now that I just had a talk with recently, and it's like, he wants to know what his CTL is going to be in 6 months. Right. And it's like, I don't really do an ATP or anything, right? It's like, it's very general.
How dare you? How dare you betray your former employer?
but I I do a very general like spreadsheet, and it's really just like 52 weeks. Let's plug in vacations. Let's plug in races so we can see how quickly the year disappears. But where I'm going with this is like, if and when I have done an ATP, again, I've been coaching for 15 years now. I've never had it go according to plan. Ever.
Yeah.
Like there's something always comes up, whether it's illness or a trip you weren't planning on or an injury or like like it never comes up. And so it's like, yeah, we have a general idea of where we want to go, but how we get there is it's not going to be the way you think it is.
Yeah, exactly. And how you respond, like, and from the Training Peaks perspective, the ATP is just sort of a periodization model with workload planning. It says nothing about how you're adapting to that workload. you could do that and not adapt at all because you're sleeping 4 hours a night and have a really bad party habit.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it, right? It's like, I mean, this could be another podcast all on its own, but it's like everybody wants the CTL or chronic training load to be fitness and all these things, but it says nothing about how you adapt to that training. And so getting back to the disease of more kind of thing, it's like, it's only productive if you're recovering and adapting to it. So just like piling on more work every week isn't gonna, like, that's a good way to break yourself down. And I think people want it to be very linear. We've talked about in the past, it's more like the stock market with the ups and downs and, but we're looking for a general upward trend to the right. And so, yeah, I think I get it. I'm a control freak. I like to know how things are going to happen and stuff too, but it's like our bodies are complicated and it's really hard to know how things are going to respond from one week to the next.
Well, yeah, it's just, and I think also from between the coach athlete relationship, I can struggle with it because it can be lots of time, talking about the future in depth and all the variables with some people's motivation to do so and perfectionism can be a lot of communication. And so then, and it's a lot of, from a coach's perspective, when they're mostly trying to just they're mostly in the present, like looking at today's workout and like the near term, because that's kind of, you're not really responding on a 6-month scale. Like it's too theoretical. It's too abstract. It's more like today and this week and maybe a month basically, but it's mostly like today and this week, in my opinion. If somebody's spending, go ahead.
I just want to say, I agree. Like I have this mental model in my mind where it's like a rolling kind of like 10-day average. Like I'm thinking about what's coming up the next 5 days, what happened the last 5 days. And then as far as like bigger picture, it's more like a 6-week rolling average. What's happening the next 3 weeks and what's happened the last 3 weeks.
Right.
Versus 6 months down the road.
Yeah. But beyond that, it's a little bit, without knowing what the response is going to be, it's just pointless. It's meta work. And so when somebody's dumping a lot of meta work on you and they're like, hey, what do you think about this? Like administratively keeping track of all those details and even some of the emotional attachments to those details, which are completely theoretical and meta. Whoo! Like, talk about needing to take a little you time, a little self-care, go do some cross-country skiing or something. Yeah, it's intense. It's so I like to steer people away from try to steer people away from that attachment to the future, or that orientation to the future, because it's not helping them. It's certainly not helping me.
Yeah.
Which means that I can help them less. And the worst part is when you humor that or indulge that sort of impulse, and then you follow up on it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I canceled that." And you're just like, "Wow!" So,
and like, I think this is the last thing I want to say about this, but like, I think this is the other thing that I kind of struggle with, and I get it from an athlete perspective for the most part, but it's like having faith that there is a plan without us needing to write it out in explicit detail, because it is constantly changing. It's like, at the moment, like I've run into this exercise with athlete, like on a single workout, right? Like I've had an athlete be like, "Oh, why am I doing this?" And it's like, it takes me a minute, because when you've been doing it for a while, it just becomes like subconscious, second nature, right? And I have to like stop and I like think about it. I'm like, "Oh, okay, I did this because last weekend you did this, and in 3 weeks from now, I think you're going to be doing this." And so I want to kind of like, you know what I mean? And so it's like,
I do. But
like some athletes, I feel like want us to tell show your work for every workout you put in there. It's just like, it's very hard to do that when you have like so much happening behind the scenes, right?
Yeah. I mean, at least some of us do.
Well, I think about like a programmer or something. It's like, could you imagine if your boss, like every time you wrote a line of code, they're like, "Okay, I want you to explain what thought process you put into this."
Yeah, there needs to be that trust there. Now that you talk about it, so I bombed calculus my first semester in college. So then I had to retake it. And then by the time I retook it, I got an A the second time around. And I'd never really considered myself good at math, and I wouldn't say that it's my strong suit, but it clicked because I realized calculus is just like a series of nested problems. And like, once you figure out, like you see one little expression or whatever, and you're like, oh, that's that. And when calculus elaborates, it's just like 7 problems. And if you've done your homework, you know the answer to all the problems. And you're like, oh, this is that, this is that, this is that, this goes together. Oh, it's just this. Now, if you hadn't done any of that and just looked at it, you'd be like, this is impossible. But I think that's what you're talking about. Like, you're working with somebody, you're like, okay, they said they're tired. This is what they need to do. This is their strength. This is their weakness. All of those are different nested problems.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, today we're doing zone 2. And they're like, why?
Yeah, right. Like the output looks like super simple and super basic, but there's a lot of thought that went into that. And it's like hard to explain that sometimes. And like, I think the athlete, like psychology comes into it too.
That's a huge part. That's what's so maddening to athletes, to engineer types, because they think it's coming, like this formula is enshrined in some spreadsheet with like, with a link that only a couple people have access to. No, like there's so much more to it than that. It's also like being able to read people and knowing, like reading the athlete in front of you. Hey, because you could say the exact same thing to 2 different athletes, and you'll have 2 wildly different outcomes, and one of them isn't good.
No, I was just going to say that. Like, there's lots of workouts that I have saved that are written, like it's the exact same workout written like 3 or 4 different ways. And it's just like, and I'll use the same one with the same athlete to find what resonates, because it's like, what makes sense to me may not make sense to you. And so it's like, I'm trying it from different angles to see like how we get the desired result.
Oh, that's next level. I need to do that more often. I thought my workout libraries were elaborate enough, but damn it, there's a whole nother layer there. Oh no.
Okay, so we talked about the past, we talked about the future, why they both serve a purpose. Neither is optimal to spend all your time there. Yeah. So let's talk about the optimal zone to be in.
Well, to circle back to the start, I don't think that there's any one zone that is totally optimal. I think you do need to have kind of a toe in each of them, and maybe different circumstances you should have, when you're in a reflective period, say it's the postseason, have 3 toes in the past. When you're racing, you should be pretty present.
Yeah.
When you're coming off the off season, you should have some future orientation going. But now, racing season, generally when you're the person on the path, not the drone, aka the coach, it's more now than anything. Now, I think like the reason there's subjective and objective ways to like measure effort. For example, you can have a power meter and you could have your feeling. And I think your feelings can lie to you and your power can lie to you. And that's why you want to use them in conjunction to try to like achieve the spirit or general idea of whatever training you're doing. And so that's how I like to think about the present. Like you do want to tap into those feelings, but you also don't want to completely overweight them, because that is a pathology as well. Overweighting people, carpe diem people, they burn it all down. Like, right? Seize the day. Well, if you really seize the day, tomorrow is going to pay a price, right? Yeah. So there needs to be a balance there too. Now, how that looks in a workout, to me, the most common now pathology is searching for answers, which just means you're turning every workout in some sort of indictment on if you're improving or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, again, going back to like, the body's complicated. It's not always linear. It's like we have bad days, we have good days. And it's like we're looking for general trend. And so like for me, I tell athletes a lot. Like I don't worry about like 1 or 2 bad days. So I use like talking about training peaks. We have the frowny face and the smiley face and stuff like that. And it's like if I see several frowny faces in a row, then it raises a red flag. Like, okay, this looks more like a trend now, not just like a one-off. And it's like on the flip side of that, it's like I've started working with athletes a lot of times, and our first goal is just to have more smiley faces than frowny faces each week. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Well, but that's it. That's like, it builds consistency.
No,
right?
I love that.
Like,
That's so important and so simple and so it's so obvious that like everyone would miss it.
yeah. Well, it's like, and what's my FTP? What's my FTP going to be by the end of that? It's like, I don't know. It's going to be a really big smiley face.
Yeah. I also think there's this weird sort of duality with training presence and racing presence. Because I think that being a little bit more emotional in racing tends to profit people more. Not totally, of course, but like it's you're going to go to the well probably. Like it's going to be intense. Like it's going to hurt. It should hurt. You should put it out there. That's racing. Now in training, that same mentality doesn't serve you. Like really like going to the well, digging, looking for answers, but also like getting too wound up about whatever feedback you're receiving. You do your VO2 max intervals. Man, like I could barely catch the bottom end of the zone today. I think Dave's an idiot. Like I think I'm going to switch over to Matti. Wait, he doesn't even have a drone. Like, it's, you can't, you deal with this a lot, I'm sure as well, but it's like, this is where you need both a little bit of future orientation, a little bit of past orientation, like knowing similar situations in the past where you've had kind of a bad whatever. Your fitness is a rolling average, and just like that, there's swings up and down, and you might just catch a down day, and athletes take that so hard.
Oh, for sure. Well, and I think, like, again, going to this idea that, like, everything, like, every day should be more than yesterday, every week should be more than last week, and stuff like that. And so it's like, it kind of makes some of my athletes crazy where, like, I ride an interval workout, and it's like, I don't know what you're going to do today. And so it's like a range, right? It's like 3 to 6. Some days you'll do 6, some days you'll do 3 or 4, or like, and it's like, it's supposed to be like dynamic and flexible so that it can adjust with you based on how you're feeling today. And like this interval first, like on Tuesday, the first week in a block is going to feel different than Thursday, the last week in a block.
Yeah.
Like there's cumulative load, which isn't accounted for in the TSS or like these other things. And it's like, but yeah, there's just like you said, it's like always thinking that every workout is an indication about where you're at, where that's not what we're wanting. We're wanting to see, like, over time, can you do more work?
And it's just, this thing is another one of those missiles that I wish I could fire. It needs to be fired every 10 days or something, because we just forget. I mean, this just happened, but in a parallel domain, the stock market. Like, it just, because, Donnie, like, threw tariffs in, and then there's this huge evacuation. All of a sudden, I was hearing some people talking about pulling all their money out. And I was like, no, don't do that. Don't pull all your money out. Yeah. And it's the same equivalent. It's like, you're going to live and die on a day-to-day. Like, you have a bad swing. I mean, me, like, I've gained a couple of pounds this last offseason for different reasons. So I'm trying to, like, whittle it down. So I swear to God, some days I'll have 6-pound swings.
Oh, yeah.
And you could bet when I go up 6 pounds, do you know how many suies? I just want to, like, whip out my hunting knife and just be like, I hate you. And then the next day it'll go down 5.5. And I'm like, whoa, okay. I need to stop getting so bent.
Yeah. No, like, that's the perfect analogy. I mean, I weigh myself pretty much every day, but it's like, you need to, like, take it with a grain of salt. Because it's like, especially after big training weekend, that Monday, I'll gain like 4 pounds just from inflammation and water retention.
How can I gain so much weight after I trained 10 hours in 2 days?
Exactly.
Maybe it's the carbs, swelling, electrolytes, water, sun exposure.
Right. But it's hard, like, that's the perfect analogy, because it's like, you're going to get whiplash if you're, like, taking every day as, like, an indication about where you're at. It's really about looking at those trends over time, like from week to week, not from day to day. It's
literally why people donut into the road. Like, when you watch people who've never driven on snow and they start to go and they wildly overcompensate in one direction.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So what's the practical takeaways here for athletes? What's your advice, Coach Matti?
I think you need to, first of all, I think take a hard look in the mirror and just bargain with your vices. Like, you're a human being. You are. And like, these things are evergreen and they come up because it's just part of our nature. Like, we do freak out about little variations in the day to day. And we do get stuck in one orientation or the other. That's a good thing to tell your coach. And if you don't have a coach, to just like put on a Post-it and like put somewhere where you constantly see, because you're just going to forget. And then you're just, unless you pull out of that pattern every time that happens, you're just going to keep on like playing the same thing in a loop. So it's just acknowledging that you shouldn't feel bad because it happens to you. It's just wired into you, but it is something you have to actively address. Otherwise you're going to get stuck. The pattern will own you unless you're aware of it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like that. And I like, this is something that's come up recently. I just think about so many things in our life are like, I think of coaching this way. I think of being an athlete this way. I think of working on mental health this way. Like, it's a practice, right? Everything's a practice. And that means that we don't have it all sorted out yet. And we're going to need reminders. And I think the hardest part is about, like you just said, remembering, right? When you're in the heat of the moment and remembering to like take a deep breath and like take a step back. And so that's where those reminders, like you just said, can be really helpful, whether it's a sticky note or something like that. Like, and
My
the
God.
other,
I love that. I don't know if this is widely appreciated, but the whole like practice versus goal or habit thing, like that needs to be more widely understood. Like, a practice never ends, because the moment you stop is the moment the pattern reasserts itself and you're back in hell.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And I like the word practice because it means that we're not going to do it perfectly.
Right.
Like, there's going to be days where we're not, but it's like, it's a practice. It's something we continue to work out. We're pursuing perfection, knowing that perfection is not attainable.
And the only thing worse than having to deal with the imperfections in your practice is having no practice at all. It's true though. Like, if you have no practice, well, then you're just going to get battered by this pattern.
Yeah. And so I think what I'll add on to what you just said, and this is also something that's come up recently, is like, we talk about like in mindfulness practice or whatever, is like the practice of that is allowing these intrusive thoughts to go through your head or whatever, or pass through without latching onto them, without giving them weight, without giving them value. Right. And it's like, so same thing with this, like you just said, like being able to look at these things objectively and approach it with curiosity, not with judgment. Like, oh, interesting. Today I weigh 6 pounds more than I did yesterday. I wonder why that is. Versus, oh my God, I weigh 6 pounds. I need to like not eat for the next 3 days. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's great. I like that language. The judgment. That's something we haven't mentioned, but that's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to, right? It's like, again, we're athletes, we're driven, we're high performing, we're perfectionist, like all these things. And so it's against our nature, but it's like, so I guess this is what I'll close with is, I think this is a good quote because I'm a sucker for quotes, but the Bruce Lee thing, mind like water, right? Allowing things to like come and ripple and have an appropriate impact for the size of the thing and not be yanked along by everything that passes through.
That's great. I will close by saying, in my children's book that I read last night, there was one of them was a Zen story about these two mice, and they were two monk mice, and they encountered this lady who needed to get transported over like some mud or something by her servants, but they were also carrying her present, so they couldn't carry her. And the monk picked her up, put her across, and then she just like didn't thank him and threw mud at him, and then just said, "Get out of my way." And the younger monk was so upset. He's like, how could you have done that? And like, how, the nerve of that lady, blah, blah, blah. And the older monk turns to the younger monk and he's like, I put that lady down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her in your head? And my kids don't appreciate that. They're like, next story, I want to live the sparkle unicorn. But I'm just like, dang, wow.
Yeah. Exactly, right? So again, like I could go on about this stuff all day, but I'm very big on that, right? Like perception is everything. And the only, like, we can't control like how things happen outside of us. The only thing we have control over is how we react to it. And
Yes.
so again, we can't control the past. We can't control the future. All we can control is like the moment and how we react to those things.
Words to live by.
There you go. Where can people find you?
gravelgodcycling.com and on Instagram at gravelgodcycling.
And again, you can find me at Kaizen Endurance on Instagram or at kaizenendurance.coach on the web. If you're interested in coaching or a consult, you can hit up me or Matti, and we'd love to hear from you. If there's other topics you'd like to hear us babble about, please let us know. We're always trying to come up with topics that help athletes, and thanks for listening. Until next time.